Welcome to my show. A guest here. His name is Martin Monza. Mr. Martin, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Timmy?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Martin. Firstly, you are the president and the CEO at Evolutionary Leap Technology Corporation. Can you please, Martin, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mr. Martin?
Well, I have a very long history in a variety of different areas, but I've always been into natural medicine and also alternatives and, evaluating. I have a master's in engineering and I have a skeptical nature, and there's a lot of things that are promised out there that really turn out to be not so real. And so I have a habit of looking at everything very critically. And then if it has merit, and there's a lot of things that do have merit, that I then incorporate into my knowledge base.
That's very, very lovely, Martin. Thank you so much. And I also like to dive to the point of book. If you've written any book or you're planning to write any book in the coming future, Martin, do you have any book you've written or are you planning to write any book in the coming future, Martin?
Very kind of you to ask, but no, not yet. I haven't taken the time to write a book. But maybe in the future, I have lots of stories to tell. When you get to be as old as I am, you've got a lot of stories.
Exactly. I completely agree. A lot of stories from the experience you've had from the historic time. Thank you so much, Martin. I would like to dive to the point of what normally contributes to long life and healthy life. There are several things. Even if we go on the internet, we search what can cause this, we see different type of thing. But there could be specific things that do definitely, contribute to a long and healthy life. I would like to ask Martin, what do you think are the key factors that contribute to a long and healthy life, Martin?
Well, look, in today's world, unfortunately, our food supply is very toxic. Our environment is becoming more and more toxic. And so, detoxification, keeping your vessel clean, vessel meaning our life form, is critical. And so, that I think is a really important thing. The next thing that comes from that is, we've cleaned up our air. We try at least. We use air filters, et cetera. We also have cleaned up our water if we're looking to live a long, healthy life. You don't necessarily want bottled water anymore because it has microplastics in it, but you want to have clean water. And those are, oxygen and water, the two most critical things in order to survive. Now, the most important and most critical nutrient to survive, unless you want to consider water that, which it can be, is protein. And unfortunately, the protein in today's world is very polluted. And so having a clean source of protein is really critical and very important. A lot of people that are looking to live a long, healthy life are looking at biohacking and using all these single compound or maybe complex formulations. And they're really missing the most important. And as an engineer, I look at how something is built, how you built it to last, and what you do to last. When you're looking at the human body, it's really no different than anything else. It's just a highly more complex organism. So if you want your car to last, you need to change the oil. You need to, do different things, make sure there's water in there to cool it. And the same goes for the human body. And there's certain fundamentals that seem to be overlooked by the crowd that's rushing towards longevity. And a lot of these techniques, they really don't deliver that much. It's something that you really can't prove. But take a mouse, for example, and put it into a cryogenic chamber, and then bring it back, or put it into an ice bucket and bring it back. You'll see the mice don't really last that much longer. Mice usually only last 2 years. And if we use that as a model, I think we could really, try to find real things that work with respect to longevity. The one that I've found is really to use alternative protein as a method of getting the right protein and the cleanest form of protein into the body. And protein is very misunderstood. People think just because it's protein, and it's all the same. Meanwhile, protein has the most essential component of which for us are the amino acids, and to boot, they're the essential amino acids. And now that the world is running a big shortage on protein, there's these attempts to make artificial protein look like meat, taste like meat, but it's cultured in a lab and in a
Mm.
big vat, and it probably has contaminants that are included that can't be removed easily. That are really, and the protein itself, even if it is like an animal, it isn't going to be ideal for humans. And this is what I've learned. I went into this about 12 years, 13 years ago. I started to develop amino acid formulas. And, I noticed that a lot of people were just copying what amino acids are in meat, what's in beef, et cetera. And so right now we have two technologies being offered up as something that will feed or nourish the world, which are the lab cultured meats. And then the other is insect protein.
Mm.
And insect protein, they herald, for example, the cricket protein be a complete protein. Well, it is in the sense that it does have all nine essential amino acids that we humans need, but are they in the right ratios? Uh, there's nine. They all have different ratios. Every life form is going to make the proteins that it needs for its own use. So, aside from the inefficiencies of having to digest it, because that's a very energy intensive process. And when it comes to longevity or existence, energy is critical for all things, our mind functioning, our ability to have a strong immune system, all the different things that are really important the for us to exist and to live long. So when you look at a conventional protein, whether it's plant, animal, or insect, there's a certain digestive energy required for that. And usually it's around 50% of what we get, we use to digest it. Okay. Now that's fine and dandy. Now we've broken down the components that are in that product, toxins included, everything that's included. We absorb it, and then the body has to detoxify what it doesn't need. And in the sense of just the amino acids, we lose about more than 50% of the amino acids that are in that given protein are made for the host by the host. So if it's a plant, it's to make roots, to make seeds, to make flowers, to make leaves and stems, all the things that a plant would need. If it comes to an animal, it's to make feathers and beaks and hoofs and furs and all the different things that animals need. And needless to say, we can extrapolate that to insects. But those are the non-essential amino acids, which comprise more than 50% of what we've digested when it comes to amino acids, that we then have to detoxify. And so, yeah, crickets, you could probably live from that. You're lost in the desert, or not in the desert, but in the jungles, let's say, and you're hungry, you're going to eat insects or whatever you can catch. And yes, you can survive on it, but do you thrive? Can you have longevity from that? I assure you that's not the case. Okay. So the key is to getting the right ratio of amino acids that are ideal for the human body. Okay. And as much as I love nature, they're not found in nature. Even if you were to become a cannibal, you would not get all the amino acids that the body needs, for the simple reason that there's a lot of metabolites that are no longer existent when you are killing something, when it ceases to live. So uh, those are all factors that haven't been considered by any of the formulators that I've encountered over the last 15 years because I was looking for this type of formulation and it just doesn't exist. Uh, Ideally, once you hit that, meaning an optimized ratio of essential amino acids for the human body, you will find a lot of things working a lot better, uh, and longevity can be expected. You know, obviously with humans, it's very difficult to run a test to do a study because, that's going to be a long study. But there have been experiments done, like they did, for example, they gave resveratrol, which is a great substance, to inchworms and different life forms, and they lived a certain percentage longer. That's wonderful, but it really never translated to what the promise was. And yes, resveratrol is a great substance. I use it myself, have used it for decades, and I think it's great. One of the reasons I liked it was that I noted the differences when I took it, uh, but it has a function that is very unique, and certain botanicals have that function. I can explain later, and that has to do with epigenetics. And epigenetics is a very critical part to longevity as well. So I don't want to, go into too many different subjects. Let me just finish with the essential amino acids. So there are mouse studies, for example, that were done with different formulations of amino acids. And when they alter just one of the essential amino acids, and there's a latest study that came out, the mouse lived 30% longer than all the other ones that were given the opposite, or the same formula, but with that one ingredient being in a different ratio. So this exemplifies how important the amino acid ratios are. All right. Now, to go to the epigenetic side, which is an area that I understand very well too. I was in biotech. I was one of the pioneers in genetic testing, direct to consumer. I learned a lot about nutrigenomics, how nutrients affect uh, the genetic makeup. And epigenetics is really a big key. So epigenetics, when you look at the human body with its hard-coded genes, we're almost all the same. You and I are almost identical. Small percentage, probably 2-3% of our genes are different. We're all human. That's why they're the same. Simple. Now, epigenetics has to do with certain chemical structures that form in the body that will control how the coding genes are regulated. And even though this coding is delivered to us from birth, and we have a good epigenetic regulation up to a certain point, as we age, we lose the epigenetic regulation. Now, why that is, my personal opinion, which they're all only opinions, is that it has to do with not just nutrition, but the efficiency of the whole process to digest and breaking down the nutrients and then the ability to absorb them. So as we age, we know that, by the time people are 70, 80 years old, they've lost almost 90% of their epigenetic regulation. And so it was fascinating when I was in the genetics world. We looked at all the twin studies, identical twin studies, and here you would have one twin that would be healthy up until old age, and the other one would get some kind of, either disease or something that would afflict them that the other one didn't. And you couldn't say it's from the genes because obviously the genes are identical. So even though 3% doesn't exist there, you got the identical genes. Well, the cause is the nutrition that delivers the basic building blocks that will form these epigenetic regulatory mechanisms. Okay. So it's important as we age to make sure that we have that epigenetic regulation so that we don't fall a victim to some kind of degenerative condition. So I've just talked for a long time. So let me let you come to word.
Thank you so much, Martin. Like that was really, really huge. I also learned that protein is a very, very essential thing in someone's body. And this amino acid, I'm so surprised that it can do a lot of things. That is really, really massive. Thank you so much, Martin. And I would also like to dive to other points. Let me just join it together so that you just understand it, because this will be the second to the last question, Martin. So I would just like to go to the point of stress, extensive exercise. You've said protein, all these amino acid are also good for the body. I want to know, I would like the audience who would like to know, like, if I stress too much, like if one stress too much, or if one make extensive, like too much exercise, do you think it's harmful or is probably helpful to longevity? And do you think cold exposure, I know I'm in a hot place, but like too much of cold, do you think it also impacts longevity, Martin?
It does. And look, let me start from the back, from the cold. So, cold, yes, it reduces inflammation and it has a variety of different benefits for the human body, but I think they can all be achieved in different ways. You know, I have lots of herbs and botanicals that reduce inflammation and deal with that aspect of it. So, I think, I wouldn't put myself through doing ice baths and things like that. It's kind of, there are more important things to work on that are less uncomfortable than that. All right. So when it comes to exercise, and look, I'm going to be 73 in a few months. And so I had a lot of friends growing up and when I was young that used to run and they used to do impact type of exercises. And, at this age, if they're still around, they have, hip replacement, they have knee replacement, they have uh, elbow, shoulder replacements. You wear out these joints. Again, look at the mechanics of the human body. Okay. If we want to maintain it, we need to preserve it. We need to treat it right. So that's my answer to that. Uh, with respect to, stress, yes, absolutely. Stress is a huge factor. And, I work with a lot of people that are dealing with really bad challenges in their life. And the one thing that I've learned as a common factor uh, throughout those who survive and overcome and those who succumb, and that factor is very simply put faith, belief, mindset, positivity. Uh, Negativity, as soon as somebody, they say, comes to terms with the fact that they're going to die, they die
Wow.
because they've convinced themselves that's what's going to happen. The body is a phenomenal, extremely impressive chemical factory. And if you put the mind, which, by the way, and the mind is one of the parts of the body that uses the most energy. So if you put that energy to work in a negative way, it's going to produce negative results. So, having a positive mindset, being spiritual, meditating, all those things, and having that I'm going to do this, I'm going to survive this, I'm going to prevail attitude is what really has a tremendous impact. Some people find it in meditation, others in religion. You can find it in a lot of different ways, but it is essential for survival.
Wow, that is really, really, really massive. Thank you so much, Martin. That means, so if I can have a positive vibe, like positive energy, it will definitely help in the positive way. Thank you so much, Martin. And lastly, I would just like to dive to someone who probably like who probably would like to optimize their longevity today. Like if someone wants to start to optimize their longevity today, Martin, what do you think are the top things that they should focus on? I've already said protein, the amino acid. Like, what do you think are the things they need to focus on, Mr. Martin?
Well, because the food supply is so toxic these days, the industrial farming practices introduce a lot of things that are not good for humans to consume. And besides that, even when you're eating organic, if the soil doesn't have the trace minerals, the biome that is necessary for a healthy plant, it's not going to produce a healthy product. It's not going to be that healthy for us to consume. Uh, One thing that they're also doing is they're genetically modifying the plants, which, is again, most known is the genetic modification to be resistant to glyphosate, which is Roundup. Uh, Interestingly enough, they use the same substance that is supposed to protect the plant and kill the weeds to harvest it quickly. So when the plants are ready for harvest, they will douse them with glyphosate, but basically means soak them with glyphosate. And the next morning they're desiccated laying on the ground. So it's easy to harvest. Okay. But what does that mean? That means that glyphosate is not just in the vegetables that you consume, but in the animals. And this is the other thing that most people don't realize is that the animals are now eating those toxins. And now you're eating the animals in turn, and you're not just getting the toxins that they're exposed to, which are in this day and age growth hormones and antibiotics and steroids and even antidepressants that they're giving the animals in order to keep them calm in these very stressful situations that they grow them in. At the end, the food supply is toxic. So you need to clean the air that you breathe, you need to clean the water that you drink, you need to clean the food supply that you consume. Uh, in my opinion, amino acids are the key, not just to sustainability on this planet, because amino acids are made by fermenting bacteria that make certain amino acids. And by the time you have them complete, the purification is the most expensive step. They're 99.9% pure. So you don't have any of the non-essential amino acids. You don't have any of the garbage that is co-consumed. So I think that's really, those are the key fundamentals right there. But there's more. Yes, there's more. We have lots of tools in nature that botanicals that can be used. Look, one thing that is totally overlooked in longevity is we have certain uh, viruses and bacteria in our body that are part of us. And over time, we have a lot of them. And, some of these are endemic, like the herpes viruses. So they can be found in a huge percentage, over 90%, they say, of the population has them. But if we actually look at these guys, they've been able to do something that humans have not been able to do. They infiltrate your body, take over an immune cell, and then they make that cell immortal. And that's how they stay invisible to the immune system while they're hiding in that. They take over the function of that cell and can make proteins and things that they need for whatever their purpose is. But the immortality is really impressive that a little virus, which is just a sequence of nucleotides, has figured out how to invade a certain cell and modify it to use its functions for its own use and to make it immortal. And that's how you have, herpes in your body. And there's so many different forms of herpes, simplex, type 1, type 2, all the different forms. Uh, and a very simple system that we have. We need to get clean air, clean water, clean protein, Everything else we can deal with. You need to detoxify. Detoxification is critical this day. We need to use simple methods that are proven. Uh, One of the easiest ones is sweating. Okay. So you sweat. If you sweat a lot, you'll detoxify. Uh, there's also getting rid of microbial
Mm,
issues because we all have microbial issues, and there's good botanicals that will accomplish that. So olive leaf is one of my all-time favorite botanicals. It has great antimicrobial, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-parasitic, and other really great immune boosting uh, properties. And if you're drinking, for example, a tea made from olive leaves, make sure they're organic, of course. And you want to do this over a certain period of time. Uh, Rome wasn't built in a day. There's no magic pill for this because
mm,
otherwise people wouldn't have these infections. So that's very critical. So there's a lot of great botanicals. I use Artemisia annua. I use the olive leaf. I use Strophanthus gratus. I use uh, Cistus incanus, which are all great botanicals that can be used, and you can buy them in the open market. Get a good source, always organic if you can. Detoxification, I like zeolite. Zeolite has to be purified though. And don't fall for those network marketing gigs that tell you all you need is a few drops. And no, you need gram quantities of zeolite that's properly purified. And that will take a lot of the toxins out of your body. Another thing that I find to be quite important is to have electrolytes, have good hydration, but with electrolytes. So if you drink purified water, a lot of the electrolytes are not even in there anymore. So buy yourself trace minerals that are, from some ancient mine where you
mm,
get a good assortment of trace minerals and including metals that are important like copper and so there are things that you can do that are very fundamental that will improve, I think, your not just your well-being now, but also allow you to age gracefully and hopefully longer than you expected.
Thank you so much, Martin. Because for me to even remember again, I remember you when you said, the meat and the things we eat today, even the animals to eat these things. So we are also taking part of it. And protein and also amino acid are also one of the great things that could help us with longevity. Thank you so much, Martin. At the end of the show, there's a question I normally ask Martin from our forefathers, from the fathers who has passed on, who lived during the historic time. There are a lot of things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today, Martin. If there is anything or anyone you would like to bring back to our time today, Martin, who do you think that one would be, Martin?
There are so many things. Okay. Yes. A lot of things have gotten forgotten for the simple reason that they can't be patented and money can't be made from them. And unfortunately, the world is all about money. Yes, I would go and research now. We have AI to help us research for your particular area. Look for herbs that are particularly good that have studies. Look, Artemisia, for example, is a phenomenal herb. Actually, it's a weed, and there's hundreds and hundreds of studies on its benefits for all different types of things. The active ingredient has been isolated and patented, of course, and artemisinin is that, and it's got FDA approval. So that's the synthetic form of just one of the compounds. And most botanicals have hundreds of different active ingredients, and they often work together. I was talking before about the plants not being so healthy because they're being stressed out and they're producing a lot of these compounds that are really medicinal, but you don't want to eat them all the time. You use them when you need them. So that's how nature has presented us the tools that we have.
Hmm. Mr. Martin, I also want to sincerely thank you for this time, for this opportunity you've given to me today, for the audience also. Thank you so much for your time and the opportunity, Martin.
My pleasure, Temi, and I hope you reach a broad audience with this, and I hope we can teach people some things instead of having them overcomplicate their lives with expensive things that don't really work.
Exactly. Have a wonderful day, Martin. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.